yeah, what are we doing on social media? Because we're only posting the highlight reels, yet
Yeah.
we all are going through like real human experiences that aren't exactly
Mhm.
positive. People who are so trapped in their identity of their job or this
Mhm.
award that they recently got or this new degree, they're giving their power away to something outside of themselves.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Your Lab Central. Today I have with me Angie Hawkins. So Angie, would you like to tell us why we should be excited about this conversation?
Yes, thank you for having me. I think your listeners will be excited about our conversation because it'll be a powerful conversation about my journey from how I transformed my life from basically hating myself to self-love. And more importantly, if I can do it, anyone can do it.
I actually love this theme as to how the process of self-transformation has come about. People hit a situation and where they learn about it. So where do you want to start in this and where can people pick it up from?
Well, it starts back in my childhood, basically. I grew up in a really critical environment, and this is not to criticize my parents or anything, and I'm just stating how it was.
Yeah.
So, from a very young age, I developed this belief that I didn't deserve to be loved. So, as I went about my life and later my adult life, your beliefs attract your
Yeah.
reality. So, of course, I was attracting things into my reality, whether that be
Mhm.
friends, boyfriends, experiences, whatever that reflected that belief back to me. So it just became this vicious cycle. And I like treated myself in ways that were not very loving. Like I used to have a very bad habit of over exercise and under eating and not having boundaries. So not only were the external things not treating me very loving, I was also not treating myself very loving. And unfortunately for me, and this is why I like to speak about this topic, because I got to the point where I hit like a very rock bottom moment and I don't know how deep you want to get on this podcast,
Mhm.
but it was bad enough that I made the decision that I was like, something has to change. So I started working with a coach, and that was the beginning of my self-love journey. But I like to publicly speak about it because I hope that other people, if they're having the same issues, that they can step in and get to the point before they hit their own rock bottom.
Mhm. Now, what I prefer talking about, or I don't know about others, but I prefer talking about how people came out of it rather than there may be different reasons for people getting into a problem, but yeah, there will always be solutions for coming out of them. What was the first thing? Like you mentioned, self-love. So probably we can start from there. How did self-love help you in your journey?
Yeah, for me, well, actually, I think this is true for anyone. I think
Yeah.
self-love is the foundation for having a fulfilling life
Hmm.
because when you respect yourself, you're telling other people how to respect you. When you trust yourself, then you're making decisions based on what is best for you, based on what
Hmm.
other people are telling you what's best. And that's not to say that you can never have any feedback from external circumstances, but there's a difference between letting external factors dictate your life and run your life
Yeah.
as opposed to using the discernment. Because sometimes we do get valuable feedback from other people, but
Yeah.
you have to be able to put it through that filter of, is this helpful
Hmm.
or do I need to let it go? So, like having that self love internal compass
Hmm.
just makes any area of your life that much better.
Hmm. Now, when you try to talk to others about self-love, okay, what kind of reactions do you get? I mean, is it like, nah, I've been loving myself my whole life. How will things suddenly change or something of that sort?
Yeah, that's a good question because I think it's a hard sell because on one hand it sounds woo woo, or to your point, people are like, oh, I already know what that is.
Yeah.
But when you really talk to someone, and I even catch myself, like I still catch myself like falling into like external validation.
Hmm.
So I'm trying to work on how I explain it to people. And what I have currently fallen on is basically like self-love isn't it's not fixing anything about yourself or changing
Yeah.
anything about yourself. We're
Yeah.
all born with this light inside of us. And that's
Mhm.
why when you see kids, they will say anything, they do anything. They don't care what other people think.
Yeah.
They're just like being themselves and shining
Right.
brightly. And then again, like they go through life and society is telling them they should be a certain way or they're too much or
Yeah.
not enough. And then we all start dimming our lights. But so self-love is basically like just reclaiming that light inside of you and being yourself. And I feel like when I explain it that way to people, it resonates a
Yeah.
lot more because people are like, oh, yeah, I used to like to paint when I was little and I stopped doing that. And that really lit
Yeah.
me up. So
Now, I don't know, I read it somewhere that I don't know, I think on social media only, that do not mistake a spa session or a session at the salon with self-love or self-care. Now, what is your take? How do you help people on getting on this journey of self-love?
yeah, that's a really good point because I live in Hawaii and it's very spiritual here, which I love, and there are absolutely benefits to that.
Mm.
But yeah, like going to the spa or, going to a full moon ritual, I do think there are benefits to that, and those are acts of self-love, but
Yeah.
it's not getting to the deeper reasons of why you are the way you are, and
Right.
again, like how to actually light yourself up inside again.
Yeah. Now, let's talk about the concept of self-love and coming on the internet, right? Since we are talking on this podcast, how we're over talking about the internet, there's a lot of humdrum about how we can do self-love and how people are doing, other social media influencers are doing it, right? They say that, yeah, we've been outside, we're traveling, we're doing so many things good for ourselves. But isn't that just the good part that we see and not exactly what's happening with them?
Exactly. So after my rock bottom moment, because again, I live in Hawaii,
Mm.
so people thought I was like living the life, and like
Yeah.
some people even thought I was retired because didn't post about my job because my
Mm.
job was boring. I worked in finance, I work with spreadsheets. So I would
Right.
post pictures of me surfing and hiking, and I had that rock bottom moment. And not only was it a trigger for me to change my life, but it was just kind of like, what are we doing on social media? Because we're only posting the highlight reels, yet
Yeah.
we all are going through like real human experiences that aren't exactly
Mhm.
positive. So I actually turned the theme into my Instagram because there
Mhm.
is like a trend of Instagram versus reality, but
Yeah.
every single caption of everything I post is in an Instagram versus reality format because, yeah, the
Okay.
Instagram may be me surfing or whatever, but the
Mhm.
reality is this is what I'm really going through because, yeah, life is not all unicorns and
Yeah.
rainbows. And just because you're traveling doesn't mean you're necessarily having the best time. Like I just went on a trip, it was amazing, but there were a few bumps that like were
Yeah.
not enjoyable, and I
Mhm.
shared those as well.
Now, this is one thing that's been recurring across so many people that I've talked to, that portraying vulnerability or portraying the reality of life is also creating a lot of engagement on social media. Have you seen that? Are people relating to it?
Absolutely. So, and not only have I seen it on social media, but I actually wrote a book about my transformation. It's called Running in Slippers.
Mm.
And it's extremely vulnerable, which was scary. But the reason I wrote it that way is again, because, people usually just share the highlight reels, yet we're all going through hard things. We're just not talking about it. And it was so terrifying to publish that book. But the majority of the feedback that I've received is like, wow, this is so relatable. Or
Yeah.
I cannot believe how many people have either like reached out to me through email or social
Mm.
media or even in person and have told me like this exact thing in your book that happened to me too. And
Mhm.
it's like, because we're not talking about it. So I had no idea. And some of these things were like super embarrassing for me to put out and for have someone else to say like, "Oh, this happened to me too." That's actually very connecting. It's harder to
Yeah.
connect to someone who's posting about their like fancy trips or expensive things or whatever they're
Yeah.
trying to show off. That's like harder to connect to that than it is to like having these real human experiences.
Now, in your experience, why do you think that people actually connect so closely over vulnerabilities, right? People admire seeing the good things of life, the highlights that we see over social media,
Yeah.
or somebody being successful. But what we really connect upon is the reality of life, the vulnerability. What's the trigger here?
This is my opinion. I think it's a relief because it's like when you see the highlight reels, you're trying to keep up with the Joneses and
Mm,
keep up with that image, but when someone else actually straight up tells you about their imperfections,
yeah.
then it's like, "Oh, I don't have to be perfect either." And it just feels like a relief because you don't have to put on like a quote unquote
Mm.
act anymore.
Now, the act that we're putting up, right? How difficult can it get? How detrimental can it get from your experience? What happened when you try to put
Yeah, because that's how I lived a majority of my life
mm,
because I had like a severe perfectionist,
mm,
people pleaser
mm,
attitude for a majority of my
okay.
life. And honestly, it's exhausting because you're
Yeah.
not aligned with your authenticity. You're constantly hiding who you are. I
Mm,
actually just I was in corporate America for over 20 years. I
okay.
just quit my corporate job 3 weeks ago. And even that was such a relief because in corporate America, even as much work as I put in myself to be authentic and be vulnerable, at work, I still had to wear that corporate mask. And to have that burden off my shoulders just feels like
Yeah.
amazing.
How has that changed your, I mean, obviously personalities change due to that mask falling off itself. Just putting on that mask and keeping it on the whole day.
Yeah.
How relieved are you feeling right now?
It feels amazing. And not only is it good for my mental health, I
Yeah.
was having physical health symptoms. Like I actually thought I was in perimenopause because I was having all these symptoms. I'm
Hmm.
not even exaggerating. Within like a week or two after quitting, that all went away immediately. So not only does it affect your mental health to hide who
Yeah.
you really are, it affects your physical health as well.
This stress that we are all dealing with, okay. Uh, Obviously, stress was one thing that caused you to hit rock bottom, I guess, somewhere down on that road. Now, how are you trying to deal with stress? Any practices that you've been following?
So, one of my rules in my self-love practice is I do one thing a day that brings me joy, ideally more than one, but at the
Right.
minimum one. But
Yeah.
one of my things I love to do because I love nature, so I try to go surfing almost every day because then I
Mm.
can get in the ocean and the sun.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, I like to try to find a tree to sit under because trees are extremely energetic. So
Yeah.
I just love spending time in nature that really calms my nervous system.
Now, that's actually kind of a dream life that you're talking about. The
Yeah, and I know
way.
that's not realistic, but honestly, because I used to live in Chicago,
Yeah.
so so I totally get it. But even in
Yeah.
Chicago, there were green areas, there were parks,
Yeah.
there were trees.
Totally
So
agree.
I get it that I'm
Yeah.
kind of on the extreme, but you still have options in other places.
I totally agree to that. How are people reacting to what you're helping them with? What's the kind of response that you're getting?
It's actually overwhelmingly positive.
Mm,
I was unsure because I thought it would sound like a little too woo-woo or out
mm,
there, but I think people are a lot more open-minded these days.
yeah.
Also, for example, in my journey, like traditional therapy never worked for me. So that's why after I hit my rock bottom, I actually hired a life coach to help me. And I
Yeah.
think other people are having similar experiences where the traditional therapy route is not working for them. So I think people are just more open-minded to doing things that actually work and bring results.
Mhm. Now, this is a very specific question to you. I'm not sure if there are any medical or psychological aspects to it. But yeah, you mentioned that you tried the traditional therapy route and also the life coach. What was different in both of them?
The
Specifically for you, I'm not saying from a scientific perspective, but just yeah, what did you see that was different?
I think the main thing that was different in therapy, it just felt like talking. And there is a part of that that is validating because it's nice to be seen and heard.
Mm.
But what I like the most about coaching is that, and I feel like I'm 6 years old when I say this, but I was actually learning how to be an adult and living life because, and by that I mean, as adults, we're usually regressing to children or teenagers, or we don't know how to handle our emotions or
Yeah.
reactivity. And I was actually given practical advice to like how to live my life. And
Mm.
on top of that, I was given like homework assignments, like set a boundary with someone that you need to set a boundary with, which is extremely practical as
Mhm.
opposed to just talking to someone on a couch.
Okay, now I don't have any experience with therapy, so I cannot negate or say, yeah, this is true or this is false. So, yeah, let's just let that be. But now, when you go on to social media, you mentioned that you changed the whole perspective of your social media account, right? From going from all goody goody to all the reality part of it.
Yeah.
Now, there's a complete 180-degree shift to the whole social media experience itself. Your audience must have taken a hard stop or something of that sort. The reaction from your previous followers and the people that just came in following new, how have they changed? What's the response that you got?
Well, the interesting thing is, I feel like I've gained new followers that I've never even met before. Because again, it's just
Yeah.
a refreshing
Yeah.
perspective on things.
Hmm.
Also, another thing I'll mention about my social media, because I feel like social media, some people use it as a way to gain external validation or they
Yeah.
want people to perceive them a certain way. But even with me, and I try to be as authentic as possible. I don't edit my pictures. Again,
Hmm.
I post a caption like this is what's actually happening in my life.
Yeah.
But even then, I've still had people misunderstand me or
Okay.
think my life is perfect. And so my point is, no matter how authentic you are, there will still be people who misunderstand you, and that's okay.
Yeah. But that's how communication is, right?
Yeah.
Specifically on social media or over the internet, there are just 1,001 avenues in which you can mess up your messaging, or even if
Yeah,
your message is perfect, somebody else will read it in a way that they want to.
exactly.
So to this point, you talked about external validation. Yeah. So
Yeah.
external validation part is something that's detrimental on so many levels. Obviously, there's positive to that, but what was your worst experience with external validation?
Well, that used to be my entire experience. Like I only
Okay.
relied on what other people thought of me, and I
Okay.
would try to gain people's approval, which,
Mhm.
by the way, is just, if I haven't made that clear already, is not the correct way to go about life. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, Instagram, there's positives and negatives, but I think that's the biggest negative because a lot of people are on there for external validation, and that just can become a very negative cycle because when
Mhm.
you are just so confident in who you are as a person, it doesn't even matter what other people think.
Now, you've come from a corporate experience as well, so I'm hoping or guessing that you use LinkedIn as well. Okay. Now, LinkedIn is a very different ball game altogether. So there is a lot of external validation as that is seeked on the platform itself because you have to show
Yes.
you show achievements, you see others people's achievements, and it's not a place where people usually talk about losses or something of that sort. How did you manage that, or how would you suggest other people to manage that?
That's a good question because LinkedIn has dramatically changed. I
Yeah.
remember the first time I really used it was 2012 because I was looking for a new job and
Mhm.
someone was like, "Oh, you gotta get it on LinkedIn." And at that time, I was against all social media. Like, I think I had a
Okay.
Facebook account, but I didn't really use it. I think I had a LinkedIn account, but didn't really use it, but I actually leveraged my network and was
Mhm.
able to get a job. And so I was like, oh, I love LinkedIn.
Right.
But to your point, yeah, I think it's the worst social media platform in terms of seeking external validation. And
Mhm.
I don't know how it got that way, but I think any social media platform, like, so for instance, if you're looking for a job, I think there are positive ways to use LinkedIn, or you don't even need to use LinkedIn because the key point of
Mhm.
LinkedIn, at least what it used to be, was leveraging your network, right?
Yeah,
So you can still keep the component of networking, whether that's
yeah,
inside of LinkedIn or outside of LinkedIn. And I will say, LinkedIn is a great consolidated way to
yeah,
professionally network. I will say
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But yeah, you definitely have to compartmentalize all the noise because it's gotten pretty crazy over there.
Yeah, everybody sharing certifications, promotion,
Yeah.
the good medals that they're getting or something on the awards that they're getting. And it just kind of, I don't know, there is a kind of happiness that you see when you see colleagues succeeding, but then of course you have people of all types.
Yeah. And on that note, people who are so trapped in their identity of their job or this
Hmm.
award that they recently got or this new degree, they're giving their power away to something outside of themselves,
Hmm.
right? Because if you are truly a
Yeah.
smart, capable person, you
Hmm.
don't need 10 degrees or whatever. So, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that as long as you're, because you
Hmm.
can grow yourself by learning and growing and getting more degrees or whatever. But when that becomes your whole identity, then that's
Yeah,
when
right.
you're giving your power away to something else. So, and this is where, like, with working with a coach or whatever, having
Mhm.
that self-awareness to be able to catch yourself in moments like, am I getting another degree because I really want to improve myself? Or am I doing it so I can post about it on LinkedIn and have everyone, like my comment?
Yeah, sometimes I also fall into that trap. Like I've done something good in office, I've been appreciated. Now I keep thinking, oh, should I be writing about it or should I not? No, at
Yeah,
some
there
point,
is a fine line though, because there's
yeah,
nothing wrong with celebrating yourself and there's nothing wrong with achieving. I'm not saying that, but when that
yeah,
becomes your whole identity and
yeah,
then
that's
you
right,
achieve that thing and now it's like now I need to do something else greater because it makes me
right.
feel good. Like you shouldn't need these external things to
Hmm.
like feel good. It's because you truly love yourself and want to grow and improve.
Yeah, I fully agree to that. That's very true. Now, if there's one tip that you want to give to people, okay, before when they're logging into social media tomorrow, what should they keep in mind?
Keep in mind that most of what they're seeing is extremely filtered and edited. Actually, I just had a conversation with someone yesterday because I was with a friend and we were walking down the street and she ran into someone that she knew and they
Hmm.
talked for a few minutes and then we walked away and she was telling me that this other person that she had been posting with her husband about how happy they were and
Right.
then all of a sudden they're getting divorced
Yeah.
and that was not surprising to me because there's a divorce lawyer. I can't remember his name. He wrote a book. And when he was doing all this press around the book, because he was doing podcasts and stuff too, and he's actually very entertaining and informational. So I
Hmm.
listened to a lot of it. But he even made the comments like some of his worst divorce cases, those were the people who were on Facebook posting about how happy they
Yeah.
were as a couple, etc. So you have no idea what's going on behind
Yeah.
someone's social media.
Yeah. I've heard stories that the more private that you keep your relationships, the better they turn out to be. So that kind of.
Yeah.
Now, you talked about a book that you're writing. Can you just tell us about a little more so that yeah, the general public knows?
Yeah, so it's actually published. It's called Running in Slippers, and it's a memoir that covers about a 5 year period of my life. It's a
Hmm.
total train wreck. It starts with my boyfriend broke up with me, then my dad passed away. So I was just, again, I was looking for healing in things outside of me. So that's why it's a train wreck, because that obviously didn't go very well. It also covers my rock bottom moment. And again, it's very vulnerable. And the reason I wrote it that way is so that people honestly can just relate to it so they
Yeah.
don't feel so alone. Because the entire goal of the book is connection through vulnerability. And so far that's what it has reaped because I everyone who reaches out to me again like it's so relatable, this has also happened to me. So
Hmm.
if you want a relief from social media and all the edits and filters, then check out Running in Slippers.
Thank you so much, Angie. Thank you for joining in on this episode of Your Lab Central. Before we close, do you want to share any details as to where people can reach out to you if they have something?
Yes, you can reach out to me. I have a website. It's runninginslippers.com, and you can find information about my book, Running in Slippers. I also have a self-love coaching program. There's
Mhm.
also a quiz on there you can take to measure your level of current self-love. And my email is Angie@runninginslippers.com. So, and my Instagram is at Angie Hawkins 808.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm sure somebody will reach out. I mean, because there are a lot of relatable things that you've talked about, and hopefully, a lot of people will get some help out of it. So,
Yeah, I would love that. I love hearing from people.
thank you so much for joining in. Thanks to the audience for listening in. If you liked what we talked about, do leave a like. If you have something to add, if you have a question, or you just want to leave a comment, do leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe before closing the window itself. Thank you so much for joining in. Thanks, Angie. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.